I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is the East Lyme Board of Selectmen regular meeting of November 3rd, 2021. I'm always amazed when I read the dates. Like, holy cow, there goes that year. We're already in November. If you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Siri?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any additional agenda items? I don't think we added anything. Delegations, would anyone like to speak to the Board of Selectmen this evening before we start our regular meeting, our regular new business part of our meeting?
Mike Stepsky. I just know our dock leases are coming up soon. I have lease number 2, Cheney Park. As many of you know, I previously leased lease number 1 for my 26-foot commercial fishing boat, the Phyllis Ann, starting when the town first bought the land decades ago. With that boat, I catch fish, conch, and lobsters, and I sell right off the dock, as well as to restaurants and fish markets. My wife Beth and I bought our 42-foot charter boat, the Charlton 2, about 9 years ago, and with the town's approval, we kept the boat at the dock and moved the Phyllis Ann out onto a mooring in the river. We were able to grow the charter business, and we now do over 200 trips a year, bringing in people from all over for a day out fishing. These people support not only our business, but the many restaurants and accommodations in town. When the bridge inspections began for the repainting work on the bridge, they pointed out that the length of the tartan was too much for that particular dock, and that the boat stuck under the bridge too far, creating a fire hazard. So we moved over to lease number 2, which worked out better for us. It's a larger dock and the boat fits perfectly there. The town has always been very accommodating, and I thank you for that. In fact, a group of us local fishermen got together and created an association, the Connecticut Fishermen's Alliance, with hopes of eventually securing funding to connect all of the docks. And we also talked with Mark about using lease number 1 as a transient dock where guys can come in, unload their catch, load the gear, and put the boat on a mooring, as there was need for more dockage at that time. We tried that year before the state used the dock for their workboat, and it worked out good for that trial year, using that dock as a transient dock. But now that the bridge work is over, we've started using it again. But at this point, I'm happen to be the only one in the group that actually still needs it. Joel has been accommodated. You guys leased a dock to him. Bob Russell has a dock at the City Pier in New London. He's being accommodated. So I was actually hoping, I talked to the guys, and everyone was fine, that if I was to ask you if I could possibly lease number 1 as well for my commercial boat. It's not very easy working off of a mooring. We got to take the small skiff out, and the boat's out in the middle of the river, and try to keep up with maintenance out there. And if more people needed the dock, I would of course do that and use it as a transient dock. But as long as nobody else would mind, I would definitely like to ask if I could lease number 1 again, as well as lease number 2 for both boats, and it's up to you. But at the very least, to keep it as at the transient dock. The dock originally was built for that boat. In fact, I built the original one myself when the town first bought the property. The boat's only 26 feet, and it doesn't stick under the bridge at all. So the state should not have an issue with fire hazards. My daughter Ava, she's here with me tonight. She's hoping to start running that boat at some point, keep the family business going and growing, and I'm sure everybody would agree that having a regular source of locally caught fresh seafood is in everyone's interest around here. But, if you could consider that, and of course want to renew. So, thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike. We don't respond to public delegations, but we heard you. And I do believe that in the future they'll be taking up those lease renewals. Not in tonight's meeting. Thank you for that. Anybody else? Anyone else? Okay, we're not ready for the approval of minutes
We don't have
tonight.
minutes.
So we'd like you to take the time and read them over, and I don't think we got them out in time. But so we'll move right to the consent calendar.
Move to approve the consent calendar for the meeting of November 3rd, 2021, in the amount of $2,128.25.
I'll second.
A motion has been seconded. Any further comment? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Next on our agenda is the executive session. However, with our town attorney here, I'd like to maybe move things around. Would that be okay if we maybe did the accessory dwelling units up front and first, so we don't have an overwhelming crowd here tonight? It doesn't seem like there's a lot of public here to hear about any of this. But and then we'll go to Black Hawk because Greg's here and Black Hawk Captain is here, and then maybe we can jump back into executive session or put that right off to the end. Is that okay with everyone? We're trying to be efficient with everyone's time, and we don't have a big media agenda. There's things we need to accomplish. So with Mark Zamarka here and being on the clock, as we like to joke around, but we're well served by you and your firm on so many different levels. So could you, Mr. Zamarka, we'll have a discussion and possible action on the accessory dwelling units. Tell us what's going on. Give us a little history of what the state has done statute-wise, and then the obligations of what happened at zoning maybe a week or two ago, and then what our responsibilities are.
Certainly. Good
Thank you.
evening. As the chair noted, Mark Zamarka, Waller, Smith & Palmer, Town Attorney's Office. Earlier this year, the Connecticut Legislature passed Public Act 2129, which in part allows accessory apartments or accessory dwelling units, or ADUs as they're commonly referred to, as of right on the same lot as a single-family dwelling, any single-family dwelling within town. The act requires towns to either adopt or amend zoning regulations to allow ADUs unless the town decides to opt out by January 1 of 2023. The law becomes effective January 1 of 2022. If a town does not opt out, the act requires that the town adopt zoning regulations in conformance with the act that, among other things, allow one accessory dwelling unit as of right on each lot that contains a single-family dwelling, and also to designate other areas where accessory dwelling units are allowed. Now you'll note I mentioned that there is an opt-out process. The opt-out is a two-step process. Step one involves the zoning commission. To opt out, the zoning commission has to do a few things. They have to hold a public hearing, properly noticed along the guidelines of 8-7D, as with any land use public hearing. They have to decide affirmatively to opt out by a 2/3 vote, and the decision must be rendered within 65 days after the close of the public hearing. The commission has to state the reasons for its decision on the record, and it has to publish that decision within 15 days, again per the usual land use guidelines. Step two involves the Board of Selectmen. If the Zoning Commission makes a decision to opt out, the Act then provides that the legislative body of the town, here obviously the Board of Selectmen, may complete the process of opting out by a 2/3 vote. Now, on October 14th, the Zoning Commission held a public hearing to consider the accessory dwelling unit provisions of Public Act 2129. At its meeting on October 28th, the Commission voted to affirmatively opt out by a 4-2 margin, or the 2/3 required by the Act, to opt out of the ADU provisions. The Zoning Commission followed all of the opt-out guidelines. They held a properly noticed public hearing. They engaged in a very lively discussion. They stated their reasons on the record and affirmatively voted to opt out by the required 2/3 margin. Following that, Chairman Walker drafted a letter to the First Selectman advising the First Selectman of the Zoning Commission action and asking the Board of Selectmen to consider this matter at its earliest convenience. It is now before the Board of Selectmen to decide whether or not to, quote-unquote, complete the process of opting out by a 2/3 vote. According to the Act, the opt-out process requires only that the Board of Selectmen make its decision if it decides to do so by a 2/3 vote. It does not require this board to hold a public hearing. It does not require any reasons stated on the record. It also does not require publication of the Board of Selectmen decision. We have prepared a resolution, if that's the way the board decides to go. If the board completes the opt-out process, then effectively accessory dwelling units would not be allowed in town. If not, as of January 1, 2022, accessory dwelling units are allowed consistent with Public Act 2129.
I'll ask for questions. Thank you very much. Very, very detailed and condensed into 2 to 3 minutes. I know there's a few former zoners on the commission here, myself and Mark and Mrs. Hardy spent many, many, many years as an ex officio, so we know how that all works down there. I have some questions, but I'd like to hear from you folks first, if there are any. Are there any questions for Mr. Samarka about this act?
Is
Yes.
122, was it January, what is the date for the opt-out?
You have to opt out by January 1 of 2023. The act becomes effective January 1 of 2022.
So we would still have a year to opt out?
That's correct. However, after January 1 of 2022, accessory dwelling units would be allowed unless and until the town did decide to opt out.
So until they do, then there would be a window of opportunity?
That's correct.
So,
Thank you.
so they're going to let the horses out of the barn and then say, but then you can close the barn door, basically?
That's the way
I
it's
mean, you
written.
just gave some conflicting dates.
No. The act becomes effective January 1 of 2022. As of this coming January, accessory dwelling units are allowed unless the town decides to opt out. The town has until January 1 of 2023 to opt out.
To opt out, but
Yes.
but there will be a whole gap of people being
that's
allowed
correct.
to do that.
That's
Okay,
correct.
all right.
That's part of the reasoning why the zoning commission acted as quickly as it did.
I heard a question down at the end from Mark, but let me just continue this train of thought. At any point in time, could the town reverse its decision and allow? Like 3-5 years from now, we do see a need, and we've let other towns figure this out, and we see that it's not an issue.
The act does not speak to that one way or another,
Yeah.
but I don't imagine why
Why
not.
couldn't we reverse?
I would imagine so.
More allowable,
Probably go through the same public hearing process and everything.
maybe. Okay. Mr. Salerno, I heard you.
Yeah, so you said they had to give a reason why they decided to opt out?
That's correct.
Do you have
That's
that reason?
There was a very, very in-depth discussion. All 6 members of the commission stated their positions. Frankly, there were too many to list. It was easier, given the tenor of the discussion, to allow the record to stand for itself rather than try to condense things down to a resolution. Some of the things that were brought up that I recall were they felt that it was not in conformance with the plan of conservation and development, that it would present privacy issues, that it would be very difficult to enforce because if allowed, the town could regulate accessory dwelling units as vacation rentals, or more to the point, not to allow them as short-term vacation rentals. And the question of enforcement of that came up. The increase in impervious surfaces, excessive drain on the schools, public safety, utilities, all sorts of things were brought up and discussed.
So I would assume then that could tax our water system, our water supply too. If you have a house building, right?
Yeah,
Water and
again,
sewer, septic.
yeah, you'd be looking at potentially an extra dwelling unit on every lot in town that contains a single-family dwelling.
Could they ever I'm sorry, but could they limit the zone? Could they just say it's allowed in the north side of town?
Well, that was, a question was asked, and something we had to do some research on and get back to the commission. They were curious if they could opt out and then enact their own more stringent regulations, and our research indicated that they could not.
Okay. But even the act itself, could they apply it in certain areas?
Well, the act states in any lot in town that contains a single-family dwelling, an accessory dwelling unit has to be allowed.
Not certain square footage or anything?
No,
No.
no. The accessory, the dwelling units themselves are limited in size, but the location, the act is pretty specific anywhere where there is a single-family dwelling, any lot.
So the underlying zone, so let's say that happens, right? Do they have to abide by setbacks?
Yes, Yes, the act gets detailed about what can and can't be done. As I stated, there's a maximum floor space area. The setbacks, side yards, things like that cannot be more excessive than what are applied to the principal dwelling. If there's any architecture, landscaping regulations, those have to be applied equally to the dwelling unit.
They share a septic. Can it be private ownership of the two units?
Yes, it can. Unlike the medical accessory units that were discussed a few years ago, granny pods, right? There cannot be any required familial or business relationship between the two. So in theory, while it could certainly be, a family member, it's not required to be. So it could be someone besides a family member living on the same
And
lot.
they can only be rented, or can it also be sold?
Act doesn't specify.
So that's kind of interesting, because that's almost like a lot split. I kind of see why they did this. Okay.
I attended the zoning commission, and,
Roseanne,
your microphone?
Just bring your microphone up.
oh, you want to hear me? I
Always.
attended, of course, the public hearing, which was very well attended. There were a lot of comments. Attorney did a fine job of explaining the details of it, and I think it would be fair to say that the four members of the zoning who voted against it felt that it was very vague. And at first, it was thought that perhaps, if you had parents that were elderly and you wanted them to be there and be close and be able to assist them. But in fact, you can't limit that. So it could be anybody. It doesn't have to have any relationship. There's no time limit. For instance, a lease, it can be for any amount of time. And so I think, in my opinion, the zoning commission had a very healthy discussion about it, a lot of questions, and I think that we should honor their decision to opt out.
I agree with that. But
concur.
are there other questions for Mr. Samarco?
If we weren't going to opt out, are there requirements to create new zoning?
Yes,
That would have to be in place by January of 2022?
of 2023.
So
Of
they would be
2023.
allowed next year without a
Correct.
zone, could they be done before the zoning regs are changed?
Could they be allowed before the zoning regs are changed? Yes. As of January 1, 2022, they are allowed. The towns then have until 2023 to draft conforming regulations.
So a property owner, if we do not opt out, could go do what they wanted to do without any controlling regulations to address outside of what it does cover, which is setbacks and so on and so forth.
It's a bit more in-depth than that. I didn't want
some
to necessarily
guidance that
get
they would have
back
to
into the
comply
weeds,
with?
but yes, as of January 1, 2022, unless the town opts out, ADUs are allowed so long as they conform with the Public Act, yes.
Wow.
And this is why zoning shouldn't be done at the state level on so many reasons. This is one of them. I mean, there's very little additional taxes the town will gain by allowing these units. The assessment of a property might go up a little bit, but not much. But there'd be certainly a lot more burden. If you figure just 20% of the houses in town did this, very little taxes, but you have an increase in 20% of the population increase. Kids in the schools. There'd be parking issues in some of these tight little beach neighborhoods that don't have enough room now, and then you have another family living in the rear lot with no care about the parking. Septic, sewer capacity, lot size, no restrictions to that, it would seem. Airbnb is a real issue. So when this is allowed in other towns, here in southeastern Connecticut, as I've discovered at the COG level, but around the country, these rear lots are often used as Airbnbs or Verbos or whatever you want to call them, and very, very difficult to enforce. that. So I'm opposed to this, always have been, and I understand why zoning has always not allowed that. Oh, one other thing. This has been done by the state legislature in the name of affordable housing. But I didn't see anything in the bill, and we hadn't had this discussion yet, that these units would be applied to our 10% minimum.
They cannot be.
Right. So, affordable housing, 8-30G, we know that well. We know what affordable housing is and the state statute on that. And, the goal is 10%, blah, blah, blah. And we know how much of a failure that program is, because in 30 years, or is it 20 years or 30 years, that the stock rolls off. I think
30.
it's 30 years.
30.
So after 30 years, it's no longer an affordable housing deed restricted property, so therefore you're always chasing that 10%, always. But these units, which give a lot of flexibility to the homeowners, don't account toward that 10%. So you really didn't accomplish that process at all. So for all those reasons, I know that's what zoning voted against, and I concur.
A question, beach communities, they have their own zoning regs. Would they have to abide by this as well?
They would, yes.
Good question.
New Black Point actually voted recently to allow, or not voted to allow, but amended their zoning regulations to allow accessory dwelling units.
They did?
They did.
And if we did this, that would alter their,
No, because they don't comport with our zoning, so they can allow the
that's my
accessory
question. I
dwelling
mean,
units.
even if we opt out,
Yep.
a beach community still has the control over it.
That's correct.
As I would expect,
Yes.
so.
Really?
Yes, yeah.
Anything, okay.
Yeah.
I thought they could only be more restrictive. They can be more liberal with their zoning?
Well, this would not necessarily apply, the town action on this would not necessarily apply to the beach communities
No.
because they do have their own zoning, yeah.
Wow.
So they then, because they have associations, is that the term? Like the Black Point Beach Association, is that why?
Well, they're a quasi-municipality that have the right to zone under Section 8 of the general statutes, and that's what the act applies to.
So if there are other sections in town which are not beach communities, but they have associations, do they fall under the same regulations?
Not unless they were quasi-municipalities, no.
How many do we have?
I believe 3 that I'm aware of.
What are do you know what the other ones did?
I do not.
So they'll have to act too. And is there, if we don't have to approve them. They have their own little zoning
Correct.
commission. Does their
That's correct.
their board has to? Okay.
That's correct.
And if they don't opt out, like we don't opt out, then
Then
They're
they will
allowed.
have accessory dwelling units as of January 1 and have to get regulations in place by 2023.
I'd also really like to look at, can you opt in? Because if, as time progresses, we see other municipalities that didn't opt out are not seeing this massive influx or something like that too. Because I would even think, 25%, I would think you'd probably be down to maybe 5% of the houses at most would do this, especially in the residential areas where people, aren't there to, they don't want to have all that accessory use. And here again, there's no studies been done to look at the parking impact and the impact on other, education as well as other issues as well. So I'd love to know if we could possibly, opt in if at some point in time you don't see this. Because, we don't allow in-law apartments. You allow that granny pod, but you can't have a stove. You can't have certain things in your in that accommodation. So, I'd like to see a look at that. So, I'm pretty much in favor of opting out, but I do have a few questions. I don't know if I wouldn't mind getting some of those answers. Plus, I'd like to see. We don't have the information. I'd like to see some of what the zoning. Members of the zoning commission had to say as well too. The POCD, that's a good point. The traffic and so forth are really good points. So that's the only other thing I'd like to see. So I wouldn't mind waiting on this for maybe to the next meeting. I don't know how anybody else feels. Like I said, overall I'm pretty much in favor, but would like to see a few things else first.
Correct me if I'm wrong, the legislation doesn't address opt-in,
No, it does not.
so you can't come up with that.
No, I would assume sometime in the future you could, but it's not addressed in the act, and without actually looking into it further, I wouldn't hazard a guess.
Okay.
Yeah, we need to know that, but I don't see why you couldn't be less restrictive. I know you had a question.
No, I would like also to let it go over to the next meeting. I'd like the benefit of seeing the minutes from the zoning hearing. I'd also like to see the statute itself. And I'd like to have an opportunity to gauge what the feeling is from the citizens in town and who spoke up at that meeting. And I'd like to have the benefit of that before I make a decision.
I have with me this evening the resolution which the secretary could photocopy. I have the documentation for that, which was presented to them. I do not have a printout of the minutes and the discussion. I think that it was quite voluminous. I think the secretary is still working on those.
It was a long, detailed meeting. We can, if it's your pleasure, we can reserve our decision for the next meeting. For you all to read the zoning minutes and maybe talk to a citizen or two that may have come, and all that. Absolutely.
I would feel more comfortable
Okay.
making a decision after the benefit of that information.
Yeah, I know there's been a lot of discussion in town about it.
I'm fine. We have two members that requested a lot of that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you. I'm not
Thank
sure if you'll need to come back or not, unless you find more information like the opt-in. But I know we're not asking you to do that research for us either.
The next meeting is the 17th?
Technically, yes.
My 30th anniversary, I kind of have to
No,
be
she can
someplace.
wait. It's only, after 30 years, you can put it off on it. No, I'm not sure if we're gonna have a meeting that night. I'm not sure we're gonna be low on content anyway. But thank you for the warning. I'm not sure if we're gonna be needing it or not.
I can,
If we had additional questions, we could send them to him for answer.
Sure, absolutely.
Through my
And-
office, if there are any additional questions, any thing, or I'll give you Mark's number to reach out to.
Sure, and I can provide Sandy with a copy of the act, or the relevant portions of the act, because you don't need the whole 30 pages.
Thank you very much,
All right,
Mark.
thank you.
And congratulations on all your successes, most recently on behalf of the town. Quite exciting couple of weeks. Thank you.
Always good to get a win.
Right.
Need me anymore, Mr. Chairman?
I know, that's why I get you, look at, I get you out of here
Mrs.
before 8.
Marca, could you just thumb through this and see if this is what they want? Could you just take a look, and then they could take it with them tonight? I think that's
Okay.
that's what Mr. Mulholland
I'll
provided.
let you look through that, and we'll keep the wheels of government going here. And Ann, I know you're sitting out there too. So I think the fishing lease that we are looking at tonight, the one-off that we have, is possible we'll do that, and then we'll go to your item. Greg DeBrule's here. And as you know, he's the captain of the Black Hawk. And as you may know, especially the subcommittee who is working on fishing dock leases for multiple years, I think many of you were working on that the one dock, I think the fourth dock we call it, is on a separate terms, if you will. And this is a long established practice, as Greg has put a lot of money into that dock itself, fixing it up, investing in a building, investing in infrastructure in that facility, and then investing in his business. We also heard from another member of the businesses down there that is doing the same thing. In this evening, his lease is coming up at the end of the year, and we wanted to get that in front of you. And basically, he had been presented for many years with a lease with terms to renew, automatic renew, or options to renew, so that he could make business investments. And that is in front of you. It's a substantial lease, and I think it's significant in the rent we charge. But he's willing to pay that for for the guarantee that that's where his business is going to have its roots, and where he can invest and bring people year after year. So the lease is in front of you. The only thing we've changed in the leases from, I think you said 2 or 3 of these, or 3 or 4 of these in years past, is of course the terms, which are it goes up 5% a year. And you'll see that on page 2 under rent. You see where he has an opportunity to renew. And for the next 3 years, that's established. And the rent part of it, while he has an option to renew, the rent itself has not been established. So if we feel that the value is up or down, that Board of Selectmen, as it accepts the option 3 years from now, could determine what the rent will be. I look back on several leases, we have just been maintaining that 5% increase. We did hold it for a couple of years during some economic downturn. So that's what we have in front of us. Greg's here to answer any questions you might have, which is a little, no, just trying to make people available if there are any questions. And otherwise,
I'll put the resolution out and then
Thank you.
to this question. Resolved that the first selectman is authorized to execute a lease between the town of East Lyme as lessor and Blackhawk Fishing Enterprises Incorporated as lessee for a portion of the dock and related area known as lease number 4 in the Cheney Park lease areas for a term of 3 years and 2, 3, and 3-year options to renew.
Second.
I have a motion, and it's been seconded. Are there any questions or comments you'd like to make about the lease and Greg's business?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So on so the lease is for 3 years, and it has it goes up a little bit each of those years. But then on the renewal, if he exercises the option, the rent would be open to negotiation at that point.
That's correct. That's
And
correct.
I studied it, but is there any formula at all that's, or it'll just be what the market will bear and between the parties?
Traditionally, and we've set some kind of tradition and precedent that it's been a 5% increase. And I would think it would go along to whatever you're charging the other leases. If for some reason, there's a whole, well, we certainly know there's a demand for those. So we can't say a supply and demand issue because, my God, everybody wants them. But, we're not there to turn a buck. We're there to provide these opportunities. So, listen, the Board of Selectmen can decide 3 years from now what the going rate should be for down there, considering it's a town dock and not a commercial venture, and the value that these organizations bring to our town are substantial.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the 5% increase for year 2 and 3 has been
Yes.
agreed to?
Yes.
Okay. The old lease had a requirement for the option, 60 days notice to the intent to execute the option. I didn't see that in the new lease.
I think
There's 30 days in here to negotiate the new rate for the lease,
okay.
but is 30 days enough time to have the leasee say, I want it, and then negotiate it? Because the town's comfortable with only, worst case scenario, the leasee doesn't want it, or we can't get an agreed to price, then in that 30 days, then we'll be looking for, not that I anticipate that happening, but normally there's a notification period that you want to renew the lease or an option. I didn't see that in this lease unless I missed it.
Yeah, I don't recall. I think the town attorneys wrote this up. I think they copied it verbatim, and there have been some changes over the 2 or 3,
Yeah,
4 leases we've had.
It is verbatim with the base lease.
Okay.
But the addendum to the old lease
Okay.
is where the 60-day requirement was.
Is that where it was? I don't know if that would be at the end.
Yeah, it's actually it's an
There was-
addendum, so it's separate to the lease.
And that's the Paul's signature down at the bottom, August 9th, 2013. I see. And that, it expired many years ago, and I think we went back to the standard lease, and
Okay,
the addendum is kind of expired.
all right, so
So
you're
we're back
comfortable
to
with
the
just the
regular.
30 days?
We have a
negotiate
good
it.
relationship with this organization. You know, he knocks on our door every 3 years and says it's time. And we do that, and you know, it's worked out just fine.
Okay, and I did notice, and I don't know if it's ever been used, but the vessel itself can be brought up on land if needed to be. I don't know if it'll fit, but the lease allows it to.
During the off season, is that?
It doesn't say, it just says
just
it
says
can.
It
but
can, yeah.
I
I
don't think
Brought up on land down there?
that's what the lease allows. Good luck with
there
that.
goes your parking.
Really?
But that was in the old lease too.
Probably won't
If it's never
count.
been used, it won't be used going
Probably won't
forward.
catch a lot of fish up there either. Yeah.
That's all I had.
Thank you for looking that over, Mr. Daigle. Any other questions or concerns?
I had one more.
Yes.
So in the prior lease, there was a excess liability umbrella coverage clause that was removed for $2 million worth of excess liability coverage. I wonder what the reasoning was for removing that in the prior lease. Was it too expensive? Usually excess coverage is not as
Hey,
expensive.
Greg, come on up to the, if you would, please, if you can and would. I remember there being an umbrella issue with all the boats down there.
I have the umbrella. We,
Okay.
we still have it.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if it's in the lease or not, but
It's not in the one we're looking at tonight, and it was
you
it
can,
was inked out of the one of the prior lease. So there must have been a discussion about it.
I wonder if we dropped them on all the leases. Mike, do you remember? The umbrella policy? Yeah, I don't think any of the leases have them now. There was an issue where they had bought a blanket. I think y'all bought one umbrella as an association at one point.
Yeah, way back.
And then you couldn't renew the coverage when Smith went out of business or something like that, and that market dried up or something, and they were struggling to get that excess umbrella, and so we did drop it. We did require that we would be named additional insured, and that they would carry the
$2 million.
Yeah,
Okay.
regular.
I was just curious.
I still have it with on Levine Insurance right here in Niantic.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, thanks.
Good.
Thank you.
And you're
Anything
protecting
else?
your interests with that more than
Yeah.
you know.
That's right.
Thank you, Greg. Any other questions? It's a good catch, Mr. Cunningham. All right, I'll call the motion then. All in favor of the renewal of the lease for the Blackhawks, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay, there we go. I'm going to continue scrambling the agenda this evening and just keep on. Well, I'm going to the pension plan asset management contract. We good?
What did we decide on the other
I just can't hear you. We tabled that.
Okay.
We tabled the ADU. So we're going to go up to
No,
B.
not yet, the other fishing ones.
No other fishing leases are on the agenda this evening. So this is the only thing. So so we're going to go up to the pension plan because Anna's here for that, and I think also probably the personnel matter, or no? Yeah. So let's do that, and then we can move into the executive session and then finish up with the Dominion building. Anna, you're here to talk about the pension plan asset manager contract. Could you speak to us at the podium and give us a little history about, of course, we all know we have a pension committee and they serve the town very well, and we needed to choose another pension asset management company, and our pension committee went through a very, very detailed exercise, weeks and weeks of collecting proposals and then interviewing these companies. Hey guys.
Hey, guys.
Hey guys. Hey guys. Hey Greg and Mike. We can't hear. I can hear everything you're saying. Thank you. Have a good night. So Anna, could you lead us through what's going on and
Sure.
Introduce us to the new company?
Right, so as Mr. Nickerson mentioned, we do have a defined benefit, it's called the Single Employer Defined Benefit Pension Plan, and it serves various town groups, and we also include within that plan Board of Education secretaries and custodians. The contract, the plan, when it was originally set up, was set up with the Hartford Insurance Company in a group annuity contract within their fixed rate portfolio. And so back in 2009, a pension committee was established to work with the town and oversee the plan. And it was determined, the first thing that the committee did was develop an RFP to go out for the services to help, with the asset management. So when we first started, we retained the services of Essex Financial, and the first thing that we did is we developed an investment policy statement, and then the Essex Financial Group went to the Hartford to ask them how we could go about getting our assets out of that contract. And we were told that if we removed our assets, we would be penalized. So there's like a process that you would have to go out, throughout a number of years. So what they did discuss with the Hartford is if we could move from that fixed asset, fixed rate contract into mutual funds that they manage. So that's what we ended up doing. They allowed us to move all of our assets from that fixed portfolio into the mutual funds. And actually, what was happening at that time is, like, every year we have to have an actuarial valuation done on the plan, and that looks at various demographics of the plan and determines what the annual required contribution that the town has to make to the plan so that it's adequately funded to meet your future benefits. So what was happening is the rate that they were using in the valuation was assuming a higher interest rate than we were actually earning on the assets. So that was just not the place for us to be. So moving to a mutual fund portfolio was really the thing for the town to do. So over the year, when we first transferred the assets back in 2010, the portfolio was $7.9 million. So with the month that ended at the end of September this year, we were at $31.5 million. So the portfolio has really grown. We currently have 92 retirees receiving benefits, which is about $1.2 million, just under $1.2 million. And I will say that during the last, say, 3 fiscal years, the number of employees retiring has really, started to move, to happen. Then the firm that we first hired, the Essex Financial Group, the individuals that were within that group went to another firm, I believe it was North Star Wealth Partners, and then they moved to another firm, again, Principal Wealth Partners. So they've kind of moved around a bit, and then in addition to that, the Hartford sold their defined benefit business to Mass Mutual. And then I think it's been about 2 years now, Mass Mutual turned around and sold that portfolio to Empower Retirement. So, as we'd been meeting, the pension committee said, you know what, I think, we're starting to get to the point where we really have to look at our asset liability management because of the number of employees that have started to retire. And they just felt maybe it was time for us to do another RFP because it had been over 10 years for these services. And so the committee developed an RFP. We actually started by sending it out to 7 different firms, and we ended up receiving 12 bids. So the committee members reviewed all of the bids, came up with a short list of 4 firms, and as a result of the interviews, would recommend retaining the service of Fiducian advisors. We have checked their references. We've sent the contract that they provided us with to our town attorney for review. They've approved it as to form. And I'll just mention a few of the comments that some of their references mentioned. They've been super happy, extremely happy. They're very responsive. They provide good quarterly and monthly and quarterly reports. They're very professional. All their staff are great to work with. They're eager and willing to work within what you set as the guidelines for them. They provide good cash management flow sheets. Their administrative staff is helpful and knowledgeable. They are both active and proactive with you, and that one person actually commented that their reporting is actually wonderful. It's geared to, like, there are certain individuals that really have the ability to get into details. The reports deal with that, as well as being more simple and straightforward for others to understand as well. So. Oh, and then there's one other thing. At the end of August, Empower Retirement served us with notice that effective with March 31st of 2022, they're going to stop their third-party administration services, which they currently send out all the monthly payments to our retirees and send them the 1099s at the end of the calendar year. So in addition, so we needed to start moving forward with this. So the committee said, well, okay, it makes sense. Let's go out to bid, get a new plan asset manager in place, and have them assist us with this process.
So thank you, Anna. As you hear, there was a lot of work and a lot of thought put in, and the stars kind of lined up in that we were served notice that we had to start making some changes anyway. But I'm super impressed by our pension committee, who just dove in and did the work and interviewed 4 of these firms and really came up unanimously, I believe, with the fiduciant. Thank you. I always had trouble with that. It's an insurance term too, and fiduciant. And super firm and with glowing recommendations. I'm asking you this evening to authorize me to sign the contract as it's been reviewed by our finance director and our town attorneys for form and properly execute this relationship going forward.
I'll move to approve retaining the services of fiducian advisors for financial advisory services and the third-party administration of the plan to U.S. Bank, and authorize the first selectman to execute a contract with fiducian advisors pending the town attorney approve the contract as to form.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Are there any questions?
I have one question.
Yeah, I have a couple. The products that they offer through U.S. Bank outside of fiducian's administrative is wide enough that we'll be able to serve the recommendations of the pension committee as far as risk of how we invest and what we invested in.
So the services that we're going to use U.S. Bank for are the third-party administrative services, which would be to send all the retirees their pension payments and to do the 1099 reporting. And then we would move our portfolio of assets from Empower Retirement to U.S. Bank for custodial services only. So then the actual investments that we use is actually a separate piece.
And that's with fiducian?
So what's going to happen is fiducian is going to make recommendations to the pension committee relative to what investments to use. So, and those recommendations will be based on the investment policy statement that that the pension committee uses, moving forward.
My question was, is the variety of the options from investment wide enough to be able to accommodate what our pension committee would like to do with investments?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
That was a key element in their decision making.
Okay. And my other question, we've heard great testimony on how well administratively Fiducian's been to work with. Any, on the RFPs, the 4 finalists, is there variation in costs for their services? Are they competitive? Were they the high one, the low one?
Actually, they were, others were higher than they were. Of the 4 firms that we interviewed, 3 were really very good, and one was kind of the throwout, if you will. But we just found that they were easier to work. Seemed like they'd be easier to work with, and they actually came in and they had taken some time and looked at our plan and our needs, and came in and kind of with a plan to assist us in transition.
Well, there's 2 values. There's a bottom line dollar value, and then there's the service value, and I think you have to weigh them both. And as long as, they weren't the most expensive one by a significant amount, then that would be my only concern, and you've addressed that, so thank you.
It's a good question, and to provide just that little bit more detail, yeah, they weren't first looking at the price, and they weren't looking for the bottom line, the lowest bidder. They were looking for the value, and I think when they discovered what Fiducian was going to bring, and then look at what the charges were, they were in line.
And actually, when we had the proposals come in, one of the requirements was that the pricing be put in a separate envelope, because we wanted to actually look at the firms and their qualifications and not be focusing on price to begin with.
Thank you.
Mr. Cunningham.
So there's 2 things that are going to happen. Currently, Empower Retirement has the custody of the assets.
Correct.
And there's going to be a transfer of the custody of the assets to U.S. Bank.
Yes.
And then in the interim, U.S. Bank will be issuing 1099s and checks to the recipients? Or is that going to be the role of Fiducian?
That service will also be done through U.S. Bank.
Okay. And so Fiducian advisors, they'll be advising the board and making recommendations on investment strategies and how those funds are held within U.S. Bank.
Correct.
Okay, and then U.S. Bank will execute those instructions, presumably.
Well, it's going to, Fiducian will, do the, the initiation of it and direct U.S. Bank how to, yes.
Thank you.
When will the transfer of assets take place from the current one to U.S. Bank?
That's going to be a process. So once the contract is executed, the town, we're going to need to, do a communication with Empower, letting them know to begin working with Fiducian, and then they will look at what we currently have as an investment policy statement and possibly make recommendations to the committee to make changes to it, and then once that happens, we'll start the process of getting the assets moved.
So it's, I guess, possible in 1 year the retirees will be getting checks from
So-
one company?
So with regards to the pension, the retirees receiving their payments, ideally, we would like to make that transition by the end of this calendar year, but
Right.
realistically, there is not enough time. So I would expect that we will work it such that the retirees will receive their payments from Empower through March of 2022, because that ends the first quarter. So it's like a cleaner cutoff point with regards to doing the 1099s at the end of the year. So then the retirees will receive 2 1099s, one from Empower Retirement and then one from U.S. Bank.
Okay. But it'll be seamless, but they will, just that 1 year.
Yeah, right, because we have to have time, there has to be time to communicate to the retirees what's going to be happening and all of that.
Okay, thank you.
Wonderful. Any other questions? Annie, you've been a wealth of knowledge tonight. I appreciate that very much. And it's very detailed, and, when it comes to all this stuff, we don't really talk about that much. I mean, I don't think in my 7 years we've talked about how that all is happening. And we have all these retirees that have given their they're many years in service to the town, and they're receiving checks, and we got to ensure that. And by the way, we're properly funded our pension, and through the good works of the pension committee, we've seen those assets rise significantly. There's a motion on the table already, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry.
No, it's all
You
right.
can kick me or nudge me.
No.
If there's no other questions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay. I'd like to go into that executive session now for personnel matters. I believe we're going to invite Anna Johnson to sit in with this, as she has some detail to give us. So you want to make that motion, or did I just do it? Or
I'll move to enter into executive session for the reason of discussing personnel matters, to include the finance officer, Anna Johnson.
Second?
all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay, you do all your handiwork on that IT stuff. Okay, we're back on. This is the regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen. We've left executive session with no action taken, and we'll now take up the new business discussion and possible action of the assessor's office. We are contemplating a contract, I believe. Is that in our notes here?
Yeah,
Okay. Yep.
yeah, just Assessor's Office, resolved to authorize the first selectman to execute in the name of and on behalf of the town a consulting agreement between the town and Page S. Walton for temporary tax assessment services.
Motion's been made.
Second.
And it's been seconded. Any further comment? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? That's wonderful. Terrific. All right, very good. And the last thing on our new business, as we've scrambled this agenda up quite significantly, but trying to be efficient with people's time, is a discussion possible action of the Dominion building transfer of ownership. As you know, it's been in our plan for quite some time, and I think when we went into an agreement with Dominion way back when to eventually take ownership of that building, or have at least the right to buy that building. And it's been in the plan as we move the police out, and that will be happening in the coming weeks, to take that building and either turn it into a brownfield through state grants, or just offer it up for development. And there are several developers lining up, hoping to be able to bid on this project, and that will be up to the new first selectman, Mr. Siri, and the new board of selectmen to come up with parameters and how you would like that to happen. But first and foremost, comes the Dominion Energy Corporation, who initially wanted to donate the property to the town as a tax write-off. If they did that, it would limit us, that we would not be able to, because we're a municipality, we wouldn't be able to let go of the property. So they would be donating it to a municipality, getting this tax write-off, but then we would have to own it and keep it. And there was much discussion, because obviously they're a business and they're in it for their shareholders, and they did remind me of that, and I am very grateful for the people who at Dominion who said no, this wouldn't work for the town to own this building. They don't want a municipal building anymore. They need economic development, and the only way that could happen is if Dominion released this building to us as a capital if you will, a capital donation or a release, but not a donation in that they could get the tax write-off. So we will be free to do what we wish with this building, and it has been the intention. And with lots of discussions, we talked about the police building and the move to the PSB is using some of that funding to either pay down the debt or improve the building or move other departments in and use that money for the reconstruction of the second floor or whatever. So that's where we're at tonight. We're at that place. As again, within the next month, we'll see the police moving out of that, and we're at that place in the road.
Do we have an idea how much contamination is on the property?
They've done a phase 1 study that showed none, there has not been test pits done. There's been discussion by urban legend that there's contamination on the property. It's never actually been discovered. When the discussion I've had with developers is that's not a big deal. They'll either be capped or it'll be dug out as per code of whatever their building code is, whatever they're building, and that would be for them to deal with. Or we could spend the time, energy, money, and energy getting grants to actually go clean the property up. But the developers I'm talking to are saying, don't do that. Don't go into the brownfield thing. It will take you years. That thing will sit there like that, and then you'll be subject to all, because you got the free money grant, you'll be subjected to all the test wells for multiple years, and then limited what you could do to the property. The developers I've talked to are saying, just sell it as is. We know it's there. We'll do our phase 1. It'll be their obligation to do phase 1, phase 2, and clean it up appropriately. And they can do it much cheaper than the government can.
Do we have any idea what the value of the property would be and how much we could make on it?
No, it depends on what the process is that you develop. There's talk about you could have a competition or a contest, if you will. Developers could say, this is what I'm going to build. Applying their design to the building code and to the zoning codes and regulations, and say, this is what I want on the property, the best use, and you could have a subcommittee decide which developer gets it based on that. So value and price working together, or just sell it to the highest bidder and let them work through zoning, and whatever they come up with, they come up with. Whoever gets the property, no matter which way you do that, someone's going to try to maximize the use of that property, and it's a significant piece of property right in the middle of Main Street that is really ripe for multi-use. Downstairs some retail, and upstairs some apartments or condos or something like that.
It's as part of this agreement, does Dominion give up all responsibility and liability for any contamination that may be present?
Correct.
And if the town was to sell the property legally, we also can give up that liability? And if we have our legal town lawyer to ensure that? I know I've been involved with some things where it came back to the previous owner of the property
Right.
to be financially responsible. So I'm not sure where we're at with that, but as long as legally we can remove the town from any liability for site cleanup or for the material that may be there. I'm saying it's there.
Right.
If there is some there, wouldn't want to be one of us in Dominion and have someone chasing one or both of us to
Correct.
clean up the site.
What's your
Well, no,
What's your
my
finding?
understanding is if you're in the chain of title and find you have a environmental cleanup site, anybody in that chain of title can be tagged.
Right.
So
there's no ironclad, get out of it, you're taking it as is, and there's no liability removal?
I mean, I'm not
So
the
Dominion
expert,
would be in
but-
it too.
Yeah, they'd be in it too.
CL&P would be, or whoever.
That's the advantage of having a lease. You're not in the chain of title.
Right.
But if we take it and then sell it, we in the chain of title now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but parking's not as deep as.
No.
What's the timeline on this? I mean, they want this tonight? Do we, like, do we have a description of the property, or, I mean, all I got is this.
You have a what?
A description of the property, any more details,
What would you
agreement
like?
write-up?
I mean, we know the property, right? So.
Well, I think I do, but I don't know where the, I haven't looked at where the property lines end. and all that.
If you'd like
Right.
to, we can get that.
Yeah, just a little more detail. of what
GIS
exactly-
map?
I wouldn't mind, I mean, do we have an appraisal of what it would sell for?
I don't know what the market will bear. I don't know what Norton sold his property for, but the development that's gonna go in there is aggressive. It's unbelievably outstanding. It's gonna be the new showpiece of downtown Main Street. And the tenants that are already on board will blow you away.
Oh, I have no doubt about it.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure we.
And by the way, those developers are one of the several developers that are looking at this property. So, I don't know. Developers aren't running away from this. They're saying, "Yeah, we'll clean it up."
So if Dominion's offering it to us, why aren't they selling it themselves? Why are they?
It's more of an obligation that they took on way back when. They don't want the property. They didn't want the property when they leased it to us for $1 for the police station. They had run the use of it. I think they were obligated by contract to have a Discover Science Center or something. That's what it was.
It
for a
was,
little
it
while.
was before, quite a while ago, yeah.
Yeah, as they were building the third nuclear power plant, and it was kind of a community
Yeah,
outreach
I remember.
thing. And
Yeah.
of course, they're good neighbors. So could they? Yeah, and I'll tell you what. If we turn them down, they will. But we
No, it's
in
an
our original
opportunity, I just-
contract
but-
was we had the first right of refusal and to buy this for $1. It was all part of that contract way back when. That was negotiated. I think
So are we buying it for $1 or are they donating it?
we're buying it for $1. Yeah,
So.
yeah.
What's the time frame that we have to?
Again, we can do some work. I need to know where your head's at.
Yeah,
so
I'd
we
like
can,
to-
I can bring
yeah.
the GIS map in here. The appraisal is going to be difficult. If you can talk about a half an acre lot on Main Street and what the comps might be, we don't know what Norton's selling his for yet. I don't think that's a public sale yet. If it goes through, that's not a done deal. And I don't know if Gary Smith's building, I mean, he bought a couple lots, knocked buildings down. I don't know if it's comparable or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we're adverse to it, but here again, I'd hate to have something and then some type of contaminant be found, and then we're holding that might make someone back away, and then we're holding a piece of property that we
Right.
can't dispose of on town. So just a little more.
So
information.
I'm worried about that too.
I'm not trying to be naive, but what would be our damages if there was contaminants on the property?
We don't know
Cost of cleaning them
the
up.
cost of cleaning.
Cost of cleaning up, which is the brownfield grant, or because we had the same contaminant, down
But
at
that's
the
not a
gas
guarantee.
station.
That's
Or
not
you-
a guarantee we're going to get that, right?
We
There's no
qualify.
guarantee. We qualify, but
Yeah,
there's
we-
no guarantee that we make the priority list.
Right.
But we
Right.
also got fortunate down at the new park that there wasn't that much contaminant down there. We were very fortunate down there. So those are the only concerns I would have.
If this board or the future board was so inclined, could we do a three-party property transition? We exercise our purchase price for $1 and we close to the preferred developer. Is there a time frame when we have to buy this by?
Then we end up in the chain of title again.
Well, that won't eliminate
That
that,
won't
but it
eliminate
would
that.
eliminate, sitting on it and waiting if something happened with the economy or.
No, I know what you mean. We don't want to be sitting on this for a couple of years and maintaining it and
Yeah.
deciding whether we're going to heat it or not.
Right.
So that was my only, it would take more time,
Right.
but it's something that we or a future board, we couldn't do it because to get a developer lined up with a proposal that the town wanted to accept is not going to be done in the next 3 weeks.
Could we do
No, it's not.
Phase one.
before we buy it? Can we do an RFI from applicants? Request for information. Would they make sure to get something more firm of what people want to do with it?
Could we do a
See,
phase
we
one?
saw, see
Get a
interest,
sense
and we
of what's
could
really
maybe,
out there?
Yeah, there's no guarantee.
Their phase one was.
there's no guarantee, but we'll have a better idea of
Your phase one was.
gauge interest.
It could. I don't know how long Dominion will, hold this for. And we're coming up on.
When's our lease up with them?
No, I don't know if it's. I don't know. I mean, you're right. We could continue to lease it with no use as a vacant building.
Yeah, I mean, that's an option with less risk, right? And then we could,
Well, yeah,
Get
but
our-
the longer,
get our
the
interested
longer you
parties.
hold on to something though, too, that's vacant, the cost
Oh,
of
agreed.
upkeep it.
Yeah.
we'd have to move.
But if we
We
held
have
on
to move on
it,
this quickly,
Yeah, move, yeah.
Well,
and we can leave it for the new board to move on it quickly. Top priority. Start talking about what do you want to see there. What's the would you call it a RF?
Request for information,
Request for
RFI.
information.
our
RFI.
request for non-binding proposals to get a
Right.
little bigger picture.
yeah.
Get a few people at the table. Maybe you can even have a open-ended round table with developers who are interested and want to come in.
Yeah.
And what do this is what we're hoping for. Come back with a proposal.
What, I don't want to speak out loud, but what if we found a buyer? And then we negotiated a direct, Transfer.
Dan, you're way away from the
I'm
mic.
sorry, and then we negotiated a transfer from the potential developer directly from Dominion. So we're outside the chain of title, and then they gave the town some sort of security interest for payments into the future. Security interest would not trigger the liability, and would give us some income from the property and avoid the potential of the liability.
And they may get the tax write-off then.
Yeah, so maybe we could negotiate something like that.
That's a good
To
thinking.
do so. Say it again.
We identify a potential developer, and then we negotiate a transfer from Dominion to the developer with the condition that the developer, once they take title, they give us paper on the property, so we have an income stream that is immune from the potential of a environmental liability. And then we'd have to research and see if they could then it would sweeten the deal for Dominion, because maybe they could take the tax write-off. Might be a bunch of,
If the money from the developer doesn't go through Dominion, they can't take a tax write-off.
No, it's not.
If it what?
It's not going.
If the money that the developer pays for the property doesn't go through Dominion, how can they take a tax write-off?
no, they would
They'd be
would
gifting us.
they get it for nothing, and then they take the write-off, and then but the agreement is that they're going to give the town a secured interest in the property, and so we have some sort of income stream.
I don't think they get the write-off. I think the write-off comes through donating to a municipality for municipal use, park
Could be.
or municipal building. I think that's where this whole thing was, and that's.
The other
I think that was their intention even
Yeah.
30 years ago when they said, well, when we do this, we're going to be able to
Not a
write
tax
it
write-off,
off.
but the other option along Dan's line is
I know.
if Dominion sells it to a developer, and then they just donate the proceeds to us.
Yeah.
So we avoid the
No,
liability.
that's what I thought you were saying. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Vice taking a
That
note.
might be tough to get them to hand over the cash.
Well, the developer would give them the cash, they just pass it on to us.
Yeah. I'm just
I
thinking
don't know
out
if
loud.
I don't know if
as
that's a tax write-off or not, but
I know.
Yeah, I don't know that.
I'm just, there are shareholders and boards of directors that they have to answer to, and all of a sudden, if they're holding $300,000 in cash versus letting go of a building they haven't used in 30 years, there might be just optically, there might be a difference there. It's the same thing, I get it,
no, I hear you.
but,
Giving
but
away $300,000.
yeah, it's a donation of $300,000, smackaroos versus a building that is in disrepair that they haven't used in 30 years.
Just thinking out loud.
Yeah, no. All this flow is great, and that's why it was on there on the agenda. Let's continue the discussion, and really, I think it's gonna. It sounds like it's gonna kind of fall to the next administration as a big ticket item. as you start developing what you want on that property. I think there's an opportunity for zoning to consider. I mean, they have a limit of 2 stories on that side, don't they?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, their next door neighbor has 3 stories, the apartment building. They changed that regulation afterwards, and might they consider changing it back with the uniformity of that particular block? There'd be much more value to the town and to the developers if you could create that 3rd story.
Well, I think I think there's plenty of documentation that the town has stated that once we had the public safety building up and running, we would be able to return the value of this asset to the town. So,
Yeah.
however we can do that with minimal liability and risk, I think
Right.
the future board should pursue it.
So even with the
Agreed.
brownfield grants, we can't apply for them until we own it? It has to be a municipal property?
Right.
We bought the gas station, then, again, DEP has seen, they understand what we're doing with the police building. They saw the gas station. They were like, oh my God, do this and we will, and this is where we are with the police station. It's a perfect scenario
And
for them.
What's the amount of the brownfield grant? I mean, we got 200,000, I think, for the gas station, correct, somewhere in that.
I don't know what we would apply for.
Okay.
To apply
It
for the
would depend on
grant,
Phase 1, Phase 2.
to apply for the grant, we're going to have to pay to have a study done, right? To determine.
Yeah.
The grant would pay
So
for
that
phase
would-
1,
The
phase 2.
grant pays for the studies.
Oh, the
of
grant
Phase
pays
1,
for
Phase 2. There was, remember in the gas station, there was 2 grants. There was one to do the analysis and one to actually remediate.
And is just urban legend, or because it was owned by a power company and there was transformers stored there enough to get to apply for
We've heard
phase 1?
We've heard from people, but we have never heard from scientists nor the Phase 1 that's been done on the property that says, oh yeah, it's polluted.
Yeah.
We've never
But it
heard.
was under ownership of a power company. So
Yes,
that's,
and they did
Yeah.
have storage.
They store
They did have
material
storage,
there.
yeah.
Whether that material, those contaminants are still there or not, in that sandy gravel that goes out to the sound, who knows?
Right.
And that's what we found at the gas station. There's a gas station which is notorious for having oil, and there wasn't anything
No,
there. 'cause
that
it all-
was very, yeah.
very, very
Right.
light in its contaminants. Let me continue to work with Dominion and talk about some scenarios, and I'll talk to, of course, our new elected first selectman about what we might do in the coming months. But we are at this place now where we're at this place in the road. So thank you for the discussion and the concerns as well. Ex officio reports, Mr. Cunningham, you want to go first?
Nothing to.
Okay,
Same thing, I haven't had an ex officio since our last meeting.
you're right.
I have nothing since our last meeting as well, but I'd like to congratulate all the folks who ran for positions, and those that were elected and those who were not. Thank you for representing the town of East Lyme.
Mrs. Salerno.
I agree. Welcome back, Dan. Good to have you back, Roseanne, and congratulations to Kevin.
Thank you.
And all the new members. I have nothing else.
Okay.
Wow.
So,
I'll echo the sentiments. It's always awkward in our calendar to have a Board of Selectmen meeting the day after an election, but that's just how the calendar falls and the charter falls and all that, and here we are, and every 2 years we get to this very particular meeting where, the cast of characters could be turning around. My hearty congratulations to you.
Thank you.
And I couldn't be more pleased for the benefit of the town. They'll be left in your capable hands. You'll do a magnificent job. And congratulations to you, Dan. I'm really super happy you're sticking around, and you're very valuable on this board, and you'll continue to be even more so. And we have at least one more meeting. I'm not sure we're going to have a meeting on the 19th of November.
We wouldn't, that's because it's a Friday anyway.
Well, the 17th.
Okay.
You have to be so particular.
Well.
The 3rd week of November. I'm not sure we're going to have a meeting that week. If something comes up, we will. But we will have a meeting on the 1st of December. And that will be Mr. Daigle's, Mr. Salerno's, and my last meeting here on the board. So we'll have cake and ice cream. or something. Put Daigle in a party hat, one of those coned hats or something.
As long as my fellow departing folks wear the same.
Some development I talked to you all about a month ago. We talked about the dispatch building being turned into a museum, and it was a proposal by the Historical Society. Well, here we are. This is where it's developed, and it's a good development. If you, like Karen Share, the Historical Society is not a town agency. They work on the behalf of the town, but they're an outside agency. And to do that, to create a lease and a relationship that way, we would need a public hearing. We'd be taking it, well, it's already off the tax rolls, it's a municipal building, but we would need to go through Selectmen and Finance and all that. But in a discussion with Norm Peck III, who we all know so well, he mentioned to me that they're working on this museum idea with the library. In fact, passionately with the library. The library has the capabilities of getting grants for preservation, for archives, and as you know, they already have many archives, and they're working alongside with the Historical Society. So the thought has come up of not leasing the property to the Historical Society, but creating a library annex. As we know, the library's been out of room forever, and this has been this new thing that the library has gotten into, of creating historical property, historical archives. And they've been working, again, with both historical organizations. So the Dominion the dispatch center building, when it's vacated in a month or two, and I'm not prepared to talk about a formal agreement yet, but we're talking about maybe, instead of, again, a lease, of creating that as keep it as municipal space, but as a town museum, organized and controlled by the library in conjunction with Historical Society. So it would still be a municipal building. So if we found other suitable space instead, we could move them. We're not breaking a lease, and we're not doing anything else. They would have the capabilities of getting grants through the library, which is significant. That alone would be significant, and substantial grants. Like in the Historical Society, because they're not a town agency, does a lot of fundraising. So they'll be able to create some fundraising opportunities as well. So we see that as the best outcome of creating that museum space, and I wanted to put that in your little noggins to think about, and that you and I can have discussions offline or tonight. I know you don't want to make this meeting any longer, but that's where we're at with that. And we are in desperate need of a museum. There's way too much, as we've already acknowledged. There's way too much in boxes, and the potential of being destroyed or lost. And we're ready for that. So that would be the best outcome, and that's where we're at with that. And we might want to bring that forward in December. So I'd love to hear from you. Okay? That's all I have. There's no communication. There's public comment. Would anybody in the audience, vast numbers of people in the audience, like to speak? If not,
I have one of the.
Yes, yes, sir.
And it's a little bit out of order, but during ex officio, Sam Smith Farmstead, just on Saturday, November 20th, they're having a fundraiser, and you can get your picture taken and get some hot chocolate and candy canes and that sort of thing. So it's going to be Saturday, November 20th, from noon to 3 p.m., and then on Sunday, November 21st, and then December 4th and 5th at 3 p.m. So, Sam Smith House. Get your picture, get some hot chocolate.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So you go down there and do it yourself holiday photos. You're not going to have a paid photographer.
I guess so. You can take. I'm not quite sure what do-it-yourself means, but
it's kind of like when you go to Home Depot and you
you use that as the
Bring your
background,
iPhone.
but you can get some hot chocolate and candy canes.
And they'll have it dressed up in the holiday
sure they will.
theme. I'm sure. That's neat.
Yeah. So I wanted to offer that.
Thank you for bringing that up. And the holiday stroll will be the Saturday after Thanksgiving, if we don't happen to meet in the third week, you'll know to get down there. We're going to light the tree, and Santa will arrive, and we're back in it. And we'll also have the light parade, I believe. Do you know that date?
Yes, the 11th.
The 11th.
The 11th of December is the light parade, and there's a jingle jam, isn't there?
The Niantic Jingle Bell 5K run and walk is also on the 11th.
On the 11th.
It's a big day.
10 o'clock on Saturday morning.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, if nothing else,
I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Good night, y'all, and congratulations again to all the people who were elected to serve our town.